Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Technically Inappropriate. This week, the boys dig into internet providers and how plausible it is to serve desolate locations. Hold on. Desolate locations. You know, we are pulling out the big fancy words this week, and I am frankly living for it. I see you. Okay. Before they get there, though, the single brain cell that they all seem to share somehow gets lost, and they end up talking about large vehicles, their maintenance, and practicality. And here I thought my ADHD was bad. So, strap on in and enjoy this week's chaotic installment while I go hunt down that brain cell, because I'm fairly certain it's still lost.
Let's get started. Tony, how's your week been? It doesn't feel like we've actually only spent 7 days apart. Like the last time we recorded quick because we got behind and then we did Tuesday, and now it actually has been 7 days. And I was thinking about it yesterday, and it doesn't feel like it's been 7 days. It feels like we just did this thing. So what's up, Tony?
I like to measure our time apart in ice ages. So
I think a lot of people with global warming problems would say the same thing.
Yeah, well, they can shove it up their ass. No,
how you doing?
Good. It's been a good week. I thought we had a good recording last time. I'm glad that I listened to it, and I'm glad that our intrepid intro and extra person is alive and well. I did have when Russ was talking about the microphone in the deathbed.
Yeah,
I did have visions of that. You know, I've never watched the movie, but the movie where the guy is tied to the bed and the woman's looking after him.
Oh, Misery.
You know,
yeah.
I've seen cuts of that and memes and that. I sort of had that in mind. That's what, somewhere in the back of Rob's house.
Why is every time I work with any kind of talent in any way, you're immediately like buried in the woods, tied to a bed? Like, can I just hire talent and be okay?
Rob, you're the one with a creepy cabin in the woods. Okay.
Well, technically, I'm the one with the creepy cabin in the woods.
I'm just blamed for it.
I'm not putting a little hobbling past either of you two. So.
Little hobbling. I mean, I can't let her get too far.
Sometimes you just got to store them where you keep them. But no, it's been a good week. I don't know if I achieved anything. I did work. I got paid. I drank.
Victory is yours, man.
I ate food, drank beer. Overall, declare victory sort of thing on that.
Wait, you haven't drank beer in a long time, right?
No, I've been drinking cider.
Yeah.
I'm actually in on the, and if you get this, you should try it out. Angry Orchard does a peach mango cider.
Okay.
Now, and I don't know if they make the cider any differently, but
well, they had peach and they had mango.
I mean from the gassing of it, because it's not the foam you get and the feeling of the bubbles. It's very much like it feels very much like a Guinness or like a Bass or a Harp, with the widget in the can and everything. But there isn't a widget in the can. It's just
straight up
normal,
just cider.
Yeah. But it has a very fine bubble.
Is it an aluminum?
Yeah, it's just like like a normal can. It's like what you'd get a Rainier in, right?
Gotcha.
Or like some Texas shitlob that you would get down there.
I would go with the Lone Star or a Shiner Bock.
There we go.
I'll take a look at that then.
And I must admit, I drank an absolute arseload of beer when I was in Texas, because Texas, much like Australia, big on the lagers, like that, crisp beer. Hot weather, perfect.
Yeah.
I love being in Texas. So just in case the Texas viewers have decided to try and ring that guy in New Zealand and tell him to cut off as well.
I got a friend who one of his job description is he is a spiritual advisor. And yes, he says the true test of a brewery's quality is in a lager, because you can't hide behind anything.
True. I might live with that.
Yeah.
Well, Rob drinks, but Rob vacillates between buckets of tar and, you know, a beer that has so much hops in it you could beat a whale to death with it.
Japanese would be happy.
It's being protested by Greenpeace right now.
Greenpeace does not approve us. That probably would get them more sales.
For those of us who don't have the video, which would be everyone listening,
Sorry.
No, you're
Russ
good.
has just run away to have a
For good
crisis
purpose, I'm sure.
in a private
yeah.
moment.
Just had to
It's
adjust
now
myself.
back on the video feed. It's lagers are crisp. They've got to be crisp. They've got to be clean.
Mhm.
You know, and you can't hide behind the cloudiness. You can't hide behind the hops and the wheat or the malt flavor of the darker beers.
Yeah.
You know, lagers were big in Australia. So, you know, your Tuis, your Reshes, you know, the old silver bullet, they used to call it, because the can was silver. They used to actually come in a little can that was shaped like a barrel of beer, which I'm sure made it interesting for them to package. They got rid of that in some cost-saving thing, but it took a lot of the character away from it. The tagline was Reshes Refreshes.
It reminds me of I remember when I was a senior in college, if I was feeling fancy on a Friday night, I would get one of those Foster's oil cans. I think I was hot shit.
In my company, I actually just hired an Australian named Tony, who is our head of security, and he.
So you didn't learn.
Well, no, I did not learn. Yes, that's true. But what I've been told by multiple Tonys from Australia now is Foster's is not fucking Australian beer.
Well, not anymore. Foster's used to be a big Australian brand back, you know,
70s,
in
80s?
the 60s, 50s,
Yeah,
60s,
that's what he said. It was like
70s.
70s. Yeah.
And you could see from, you know, you would go to pubs and they would have Foster's on tap and everything. And then, you know, just for how things did, it sort of rolled off and it stopped getting, you know, bought and was sold in smaller and smaller places. And the company that made Foster's, I forget who it was originally, but they were bought, Carlton United, and they were bought out by the New Zealand brewing conglomerate, Lion Nathan, I think, and or maybe it was vice versa, I don't know. But they came up in the late 80s and 90s. What they said was, you know, they jumped on the back of the whole Hollywood Australian thing, you know, with Crocodile
the Paul
Dundee
Hogan,
and
Crocodile.
Paul Hogan,
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
that's not a beer.
And the smart thing that they did was they brewed Foster's in the geographic locations where they sold it around the world. They took the basic recipe and tweaked it for the local taste. So, you know, the Foster's you would drink in the US wasn't the same as the Foster's you would drink in Germany. It wasn't the same as the Foster's you drink in Russia. And
Sounds like
so,
Sapporo with
That's
Japan.
true.
you know,
That's true for a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
because they weren't trying to do Guinness, which is everything's made in St. James Gate, you know, and it's shipped everywhere in the world. This was like, no, we want to get as much of your money as is humanly possible, and so we'll make it be attractive to you.
Okay. Well, but this is reassuring. I thought y'all were headed towards telling me that Foster's is the Outback Steakhouse of beers. It is, in fact, it does have historical Australian roots. It's not just a...
unlike Outback.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So-
Yeah. So when I played, I played rugby for Manly, which is one of the grade clubs in Australian Sydney.
I've been to Manly. I took the ferry there, and we made lots of jokes on the way there.
Beautiful location. It's a fantastic place. The Stein bar and everything, you know. But they were sponsored when I played for them by Carlton United Breweries, and they held a sponsors day after the games once. And I remember getting changed, and I'm putting on my shirt and tie and sports coat, and the club president came over to me and he said, "Tony, I know your view of Foster's. You're going to go into that tent, and they're going to give you a can of Foster's, and you're going to say thank you, and you're going to drink it, and you're going to be happy with it. And I went, yeah,
Sir,
okay.
yes, sir.
And you felt
Yeah.
seen at that moment.
Everyone understood the position. We were just simply making the sponsors happy. I'm not a class trader by drinking it. So
That's awesome. Well, as much as Tony's been on beer, Russ, how's your week been?
It's been a good week. Yeah, we dug out from the snow. Wait, there was.
Oh yeah, you're
we dug out
your...
from the ice. The ice melted.
How long did it stick around? Actually, how long did it
long.
actually stick around?
I mean, it was like 60 degrees the next day. It was all gone. So
The Dance to the Panic podcast you were
yeah,
doing?
exactly. No, that's not true.
Russ
Like, my
says,
kid was
Russ
out of
says
school.
it was only a day or two, but he hasn't been outside in 3 weeks.
No, that's true. I mean, that's how I keep
Not
this
since
healthy
the
green
desert.
glow. So, I'll tell you what. So the desert, one of the this crew that I was out there in the desert with that were doing this run,
Right.
as a thank you for driving them out there, they sent a guy over this weekend to detail my car. You know, the Big Bertha, Rob, the
Yes.
Sequoia.
This is the big guy Sequoia with the
This
with
poor
the
guy.
deadless-
It's the biggest. Like, this thing is the biggest vehicle on the planet. It takes spotted owls for fuel.
It really
And
does.
It's obnoxious.
Mixes
But
them with
I got it
dinosaurs
I
for
got
the
it from
proper.
my dad, so I didn't go out and buy this gas guzzler. It was gifted to me. But it's lovely. But but I take scouts around in it. It's gotten, in the last 15 years, it's gotten pretty grody. But this poor guy that came to detail it did not. I don't think he knew what he was getting into, and he was there for 4.5 hours.
Oh my goodness.
But the car is amazing.
I've driven this thing, Tony, for Russ's birthday. By the way, we'll talk about this later, but I'll get your footage. I want to go through it, but I drove it to and back. It was funny. I was originally not supposed to drive this thing. It was supposed to be one of his other friends, and everyone was scared to drive it out of his driveway. Russ's driveway is built in this way. Like, we all got out there. I'm like, all right, cool. You're driving, right? Like, yep. But I'm not taking it out of this driveway. And I'm like, what do you mean you're taking it out of this driveway? Like, this is the first part of the trip.
Easiest.
And they're
See,
like,
this is where you need technology in your vehicle. The
yeah.
the 360 camera, the
It's got
reversing
a backup
camera.
camera. I mean, I don't know.
They were panicked as shit. So
Well, this is the same reason I like to put lots of like red pepper flakes on my pizza, because then nobody will mess with it, right? They're not going to.
Exactly.
Nobody else wants to eat it. So my car is so big that no one in my house wants to drive it. Everyone's scared of it. Rob's attesting that even friends of mine that need to run a bus to an event
Yeah.
are afraid to drive it because it's too big.
yeah.
Which means nobody's
Hummers
messing with my stuff. It's mine. And
Hummers
no
sit
one else
next
will
to
ever
it
drive
and
it.
feel emasculated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But now, so we're supposed to back out of the driveway. So I'm like, and everyone's like, nope, not doing it. Won't touch this thing. And I'm like, all right, so it's on me. And I'm like, I'm the only one that owns a vehicle bigger than Russ, which is that fucking transit van I own. So I'm like, all right, I'll back it out. And then we got it out there, and everyone just piles in the car, and I'm like, I'm still in the driver's seat. I'm like, well, I guess I'm fucking driving. So
You're signed up.
But isn't it just on a Land Cruiser platform though?
I don't know.
I don't think. Yeah,
no, maybe
it either is or it's about the same dimensions.
it's big.
But the thing is,
right.
and I do want to clarify the record, Tony. This is not an emasculating vehicle to stand next to, even though it's gigantic. It's more like the really, really big lady in the Walmart who's kind of going, just kind of like taking up the aisle, and you can't get around her, and But
Under the advice of my legal counsel, based on last episode, I'm
Tony taking a step back this week.
sorry. Okay.
But no, you're all good. But no, but in a way, Russ is not wrong, because this thing, you look at it and it doesn't look big. You stand next to it, you're not sure, but then you get in and you're like, okay, this is okay sized. It's
Did we have just to try a tangent here now? And you guys tell me whether you want to go down this path or not.
I'll let Russ give me the signal. He's probably the most.
Podcast is called Technically Inappropriate. We're 20 minutes in, and we're spoken about beer and trucks.
No, we're 15 minutes in technically. I'm cutting the rest of that out, but.
I was wondering the same thing, Tony, but.
Well, no,
I'm okay.
if this is where we're at, I'm fine with it. Whatever we want.
The topic for today was supposed to be Starlink.
Well, we'll get to it.
And apparently what we're talking about is Russ's Sequoia that in and of itself can act as a ground station.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
So
got its own zip code.
Well, I'll finish my story and we'll roll into this. And yeah, I was going to say I'm going to skip my whatever, like what I did this week because frankly, I was mostly editing. But but for the most part, so I drove the thing all the way there. The one thing I'll say about Russ's like Sequoia, like from 0 to 10 miles an hour, boom. And then everything between there and 60 is pack a lunch, like eat 2 dinosaurs, 2 spotted owls, and spit it out the back.
Yeah. What's the hurry?
Yeah, but to get to 10 miles an hour, does it faster than a Tesla Plaid, man. I swear to God.
I swear, my F-150 does 0 to 60 in something like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
It is ridiculously quick for something that weighs like 5,000 pounds. You know, or how I don't really know how much.
Well, you're probably less than mine. If we're being serious about it, we have the same engine.
The Transit?
The Transit. It's a 3-ton vehicle.
Yeah.
Like straight up with all the seats in it. And then the Sequoia, my Transit van will race the Sequoia and beat it to the quarter mile like by half. I swear to God that. It gets to 10 miles an hour quick, forever to get to 60. It's literally like you're...
Yeah. My dad has the V8 diesel Land Cruiser.
Right. You can get that outside the United States.
That thing isn't particularly quick per se, but once you get it up to speed, it has 0 problems holding it, whether you're heading up a vertical slope or whatever. That engine is just fantastic, in terms of the power that it puts out, the torque. And it's probably got like 3,000 Newton meters of torque or something ridiculous,
I can go on Land Cruisers forever. Let's get into the episode.
I have an overwhelming urge to scratch my balls right now. There's so much beer and truck conversation.
You also got to grunt while you do it.
Oh, yeah. Big absolutely. Spread grunt.
All right.
That's why I have the lifting desk, so that I can raise it while we're talking and get a good solid hand.
Just kind of like, shake a little bit.
Get the old Christmas handshake, where you get a handful of nuts. And
nuts and mistletoe. So
when it's used offensively, that's referred to as a squirrel grip.
We've got so much merch just based off what fucking shit Tony says. All right,
I want to see the Mangy Yak plush toy.
Man, I just locked up for a second. All right. This week's episode, before we go any further. By the way, I love this diatribe. I just figure we should maybe make something out of this. Otherwise, we'll go from there. But not just Starlink.
Rob's looking at his phone. He sent us, Russ, one word and said we'd talk about this.
No, I have made.
He's got notes.
I got notes.
He's got a bunch of notes.
I feel it's like I'm in middle school and I walk into history and there's a test.
Pop quiz, bitches. No. Pop quiz. So sorry for using my phone.
Well, it's America,
tonight.
So all you have to do is just drop the U from all the words and you'll be fine.
Exactly. Sorry for using my phone this week, but I just didn't have a chance to I have family in town and they're using the room. So a lot of my normal equipment in here, I pulled it out and it's in the kitchen. But so anyway, this week's episode, we are talking about the U.S. infrastructure, what we can do to literally get internet better in more places. Starlink has been one of those ones that has been kind of popping up a lot. But in general, I just want to talk about, how can I live in the middle of fucking nowhere with good internet service? Because that's all I care about. And then, how do we get in a good spot with these things? like HughesNet was a thing for a while. You got decent download, but shit upload. Suddenly Starlink's come along. It's getting better and better. But my goal in life is to get away from everything and all things and just live in the middle of the United States where there's nothing, but still be able to do stuff like this and like connect when I want to. But when I turn it off, they ain't shit for miles, boys. How do we go with this?
Russ, aren't you a Starlink all the time user?
Being here in Texas.
Yeah. No.
I just seem to remember, and this is probably wrong, of us having a conversation and somebody, I could have sworn it was you saying that you.
What is your internet actually? Because it's not Starlink, Russ. But what are you on?
It's AT&T. It's Uverse.
Oh, you're on Uverse.
Yeah.
Like that Uverse isn't a thing in my area. Like Comcast
or whatever
runs
it is
in
now.
Northwest.
Yeah, I forget. They've rebranded and changed it or whatever it is.
It's
AT&T.
Yeah, I'm on Comcast Business, and then Tony's
and I'm just on regular everyday Comcast.
So X-fuckity because it's terrible.
Yeah. No, but I've never had Starlink or been any of that stuff, Tony. I don't know where that's coming from.
So I have a Starlink terminal. I pay for Starlink to use at the cabin.
Okay.
And or at least I'm paying for it because we wanted to test it out at the cabin, and because the copper out there was laid down sometime just after Alexander invaded Iran or Persia, and the DSL, I can get a cracking speed of 50 kilobits on DSL.
And then my son comes in and takes it all.
Yeah. And the cellular networks are not very good. You can barely get AT&T in the place and that. So you can't get any real throughput on it. So I signed up for Starlink to try it out. And I have to say that the experience has been, very, very good given the constraints of the place where the cabin is. So the problem with the cabin is that it's all in old growth forest. So it's all 200 foot tall pine trees. So you've got a small area that's cut out where the cabin is put in, and then you've got 200 foot tall pine trees around it. So it's hard to get a good view, an unobstructed view of the sky per se.
Skyline, yeah.
And so I knew that going in. So I'm not blaming Starlink for this at all. I knew that going in. What I was hoping was that if you think about the promise of Starlink, the small satellites forming constellations, as soon as you have a complete shell, you should always have a satellite more or less directly above you all the time. And so that angle of deflection or declination or whatever you need shouldn't be as big a requirement as you would think it would be with a full shell. But I know they're building it out. So what my experience has been so far is that you get awesome. I get about 50 to 60 megabit download, and then some amount of megabits up. I don't know what it is, but the trouble with it is about every 12 seconds you have or every minute you have 12 seconds worth of dropout.
Oh, that's terrible.
Well, yes, if you were expecting to have a chatty protocol talking back and forwards across a link, having 12 seconds of dead time would be bad. But if you're doing buffered protocol, like you're watching a movie or you're downloading something, you have 50 meg, 50 meg, 50 meg, nothing. 12 seconds later, you get 50 meg again. It doesn't impact it because the buffering system in those protocols understands that and will fill up that the totality of the buffer to take care of that 12-second gap. So it's really good for working out there when I have to do things like if I'm out there and I need to pull down an ISO or, grab a VM and pull a couple of gigabytes of bits to the cabin, perfect. Want to do a Teams? Well, Teams is a shitty Electron app. But if you want to do, once again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. If JavaScript was the answer, then the question was bloody stupid. And, but if you want to do that chatty back and forwards video call thing, conferencing type stuff, you can't.
Yeah.
Because everything's just going to lock up for 12 seconds or a second here and 2 seconds there and so on. But I'm really bullish on Starlink. I think once they get those shells dropped in and they get, and they're talking something like 40,000 satellites required to do that. There's some, I don't know the exact number, but it's some ridiculously large number of satellites.
Well, this is going to come in one of my later questions, actually, but I'll leave it until then.
I think they'll be fantastic. I think they'll really upset the, especially for rural, right? Mm-hmm. You're never going to beat, copper, good quality copper in the ground, good quality fiber in the ground to the house. I'm here on some shitty hybrid fiber coax thing that Comcast offers. But if I could get fiber to the house, absolutely would. Mm-hmm. You're not going to beat that. You're just simply not through any RF technology. But, if you were outside of that area, mm-hmm. It'll be fantastic. I'm real. And then there's entire market segments that can be changed. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever taken a cruise, but, when you take a cruise and you buy the internet package, you get like 2 megabits, and that's $150 or something, Mm-hmm. It's I once shipped, I actually shipped a DVD image from the balcony of a cruise ship.
Of course you have.
When I was on my honeymoon, because we shipped the Visual Studio product and I was responsible for one of the DVD images in the Visual Studio product. And I had to rebuild it to ship it. So I did the whole thing over cruise ship internet.
This is me shaking my head.
Oh, there was
sounds like true love.
The bill was enormous, and it was all billed on the corporate Amex, so I didn't particularly care. But you think about it. Once you can turn a cruise ship in the Pacific into something the same as a house out near Spokane or in the middle of the Panhandle in Texas or whatever.
Spokane's actually a city. They have their own copper and internet.
No, but
I know what
I'm saying. Well, if you've ever been to Eastern Washington, it is not the world's most highly populated. Eastern Washington. It's not the world's most highly populated place.
No one thinks of Eastern Washington as Washington. It's kind of crazy.
And so, if you can turn the middle of the Pacific into something like that, mm-hmm. all that dynamic changes. And I think Starlink has an incredible opportunity to do that.
I should take that back. It feels more like Arizona space. Like the one thing, like Western versus Eastern Washington, is like you go over the mountains and you come on the other side and it's like suddenly it feels very desert-like. It's crazy.
It's arid. Yeah.
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 But yeah, that's interesting.
I keep getting stuck in this mental problem. I've been here 25 years, right?
Yeah.
I still get stuck because where I grew up to the east was the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
So the back of Buggery was to the west of you. And here in Washington, to the west is the ocean. And the back of Buggery is to the east of me. And so whenever I have to talk about, places far
west versus east.
I'm like, is it east? Is it west? Hang on, north,
so
south, east,
west. You're always
I gotta
slightly
visualize the
disoriented.
map.
Yeah. Truth, right?
Oh man.
So many questions there. Russ, thoughts for
yeah, I mean, I think this is a step. It's not like you haven't had internet access in rural areas before, right? And there's other ways to do this. It's just, clearly the technology is improving. But I'm all for anything that makes this type of access more ubiquitous, because I feel like access to information is more and more a utility like anything else, right? So you may live in an area where it's unrealistic to expect a sewage system or electricity. So you got to dig a well or put in a septic tank or run some solar panels. You got to have to make some adjustments because those utilities are simply not available based on how remote your location is. But in as much as it's possible, and Starlink seems to be something that's making it possible, if you can make these utilities more accessible, I think we're all the better for it.
Interesting. So let me dig into a second piece in this because, I'll try and I've got kind of a narrative I'm wrapping around, which is what I want to kind of walk us through. But so Starlink's there. We've kind of hit these things. We know that having internet access is almost becoming a basic, necessity in America. But Google Fiber has been around for a bit and it's still punching up. It's not all the way there yet. And and I'm almost glad Tony said it because that's one of the things I was going to say is you look at the Seattle backbone and what's going on within the Northwest, and maybe not as much in your area, Russ, but Seattle's a absolute dumpster fire. You have Comcast, which is maybe the best, and that's terrible to say. CenturyLink is a joke. They've got no real fiber game plan. And then now you've got Google, who's in the Washington area, but I kind of live on the south side of things. I can't get it. I'm running Comcast business. We can't hit this here. What do we do with actual real fiber and all these things that we need to go do?
What's the likelihood you're going to get fiber out to, say, the cabin?
Well, low, right? Because I can't get in the city.
Yes, Tony, sorry. That's a surprisingly insightful question, Russ.
Mm-hmm.
I get one.
One for the series.
And now we'll wait for another month.
That's right.
Because the problem is not the technology.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the cost of deployment.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a dirt road that services the cabin.
Right.
And
I love to run
way back in the dark mists of time, the U.S. government paid AT&T an imperial arseload of money, not a metric arseload, an imperial arseload.
It's 1/3 bigger.
So real numbers is what you're saying.
Exactly.
To push copper everywhere around the United States. And so they sent some poor busted ass crew out through that area with a trenching machine and they laid copper there. Well, that was the last time that copper has ever been serviced.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was talking to the lineman because we had a problem. We had some...
Still do.
So we did some updates to the water system at the cabin.
Right.
And the guys just elected that, this cable thing that we've just torn out of the ground, that can't be important. So they just sort of left the ends on either side of the road. And I had the lineman come out and, I was chatting to him about it. And what he was telling me was the company that owns the copper now, it's not AT&T anymore.
They subsidized it out, right?
Well, it went from AT&T and then they split AT&T up, with the whole monopoly blow up thing, and then it became Northwestern Bell or something.
Yeah.
And then that sold and broke up to become Quest. So Quest was the last big company that owned it. And then they sold it to a small regional group out of Roslyn in Washington State. Now, Roslyn's in the middle of bloody nowhere, so it sort of makes sense. And they handled the thing. And he was saying that No, they know they have to replace that copper. The copper has because the state or the county will send snowplows down the road once every season, sort of thing. When you get enough snow that they're like, okay, we need to do it to make our people feel better.
Mm.
Not the people that live there. No, our people that have to go in case
deal with this
fire or something, right?
Dumpster fire.
They'll send a snowplow down, and those snowplow drivers, they're sharp tools. They're highly educated and trained, and so they will take the pedestals that are on the side of the road, pick them up in the blade of the snowplow, drag them along the ground for 100 odd yards or so, and then throw them off once it gets too heavy on the snowplow, and then keep going. Because clearly keeping the snowplow on the road would be just far too hard. And so the poor lineman, he has to come out and join that copper back up again. There's probably 400 dB a loss in that copper cable.
Just in the joins.
Because of all the joints in it.
Yeah.
And so he said, our plan is because the biggest cost to us is actually getting a crew of people there, digging the trench, putting the thing in, covering it all up. That's the biggest cost. So the next time we do this, we're just going to lay fiber. We're not even going to bother with copper.
Right.
Because it doesn't make any sense for us to put copper. Because they can lay fiber and not have those little poles every, however.
Oh, you can go way farther. Fiber, right? Yeah.
And so they can just lay fiber, take the fiber drops into the various properties that they sell, they service, sorry. And then there's nothing for those snowplow drivers to hit as they drive past. But the biggest cost is the people and the time and the effort to trench the fiber. And that's the same thing that happens in Seattle and in every big city. The biggest cost is getting digging up the street, paying the men to do it, barricading everything off, getting the permits from the government, blah, 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 putting whatever it is in the ground, covering it up, retarring it, and so on. So when I lived on Mercer Island, so Mercer Island is a very rich island in Seattle.
Yeah.
If you had a good arm from my condo, you could throw a baseball into the CenturyLink hub, the CLEC, I think they call it. I don't know what CLEC, CLEC. I don't know, consumer located electronic, or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but you could throw a baseball and hit it. If you took a time domain reflectometry reading, and I know this because the guy did it while he was in my place, from my place to that CLEC, which is where my DSL came from, it was 6,500 feet. So that piece of copper ran like a mile and a bit up the island and back again.
Right.
Just because of the build out. You would never do it that way. If you actually had to redo the copper today, I'd be 300. My condo would be 300 feet from the CLEC, but instead it's 6,000. That's the problem with the U.S. This is why all of these countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, and the subcontinent like India and Pakistan, and that, have just dodged the entirety of deployed network and gone mobile.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they don't have to absorb the cost of deploying shit in the ground anymore. They can just put one tower, serve 1 million people, sort of thing, and that's
and that's a lot of
the
what
Starlink approach.
Yeah,
will help.
And that's one of the things I'll say about India is I worked for a company that had to deal with CDN work in that area, and it's always been a nightmare because the backbones were so thin that we had to completely design how the in content delivery network. So it's a cache that sits on the end of this wire that then goes off on a leaf, right? So half the game plan in when you look at India was just how we could do a lot more with a lot less and stuff like that. Russ, how's your world work over there? Like, have you seen this? Like, what kind of noise have you heard in your space? Like, you're kind of in a big, one of the second biggest state in the United States. Like, what do you know?
Well, I guess my perspective may be more shaped by the kind of work that I'm doing professionally right now, which is around, food manufacturing and risk.
Mm-hmm.
And where I can see something like Starlink and more ubiquitous connectivity becoming really advantageous it is in dealing with these rural areas, especially in developing countries where, you need to be able to audit your farmers You need to be able to audit them to make sure that they're meeting their, whatever claims they're making. They're organic, they're non-GMO, they're not using child labor, they're using sustainable practice. What all these different certifications
GMO, child labor
require some professional from an ag extension or a certifying body to go. Actually, someone's got to go talk to these farmers, right? And they've got to capture data. And the more of that data that we can capture in the field directly with that farmer, the better we are, right? But there's all kinds of solutions in this industry that are basically working around the lack of connectivity in those, very rural places, where if you had a global infrastructure of something like Starlink, where, you knew you had access no matter where you were, or consistent access no matter where you were, there's a lot that we could be doing in terms of data capture. And the thing I'm interested in these days is around, sustainability risk and regulatory compliance risk and things like that. But the earlier we can capture that kind of information, the better. But the problem is we don't really capture that information at the farm. We capture that information at the vendor who's processing what comes from the farm, because you can't get there's no consistent connectivity in the field.
Well,
right?
While we're on this, let's poke this bear for a second. How much loss of visibility or do you lose between the farmer from the vendor?
I don't think we know.
Okay.
I think we know there is a loss of quality of data every time it changes hands, right? But I don't think that it's really.
So you don't even think we've even touched what
I don't
that
even
could be?
Know. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking out of my ass a little bit, Rob.
Well, you might be, but you're talking.
As far as I know, I don't know.
Suddenly, your colon's very smart. I'm actually very interested in this because, as a kid, you played telephone, right? Like one side says one thing and the other end says something that's completely different. And when we start talking about things about security and chaining things up, knowing what came out from the actual tractor to what came out in the bottle.
And it's not just about, it's not necessarily that data loss is nefarious, right? It's not.
No, I'm not saying that.
Although
I'm not saying that.
There's a lot of room in there for food fraud and adulteration to happen between the producer, the farmer, and the manufacturer. But
they say white lies are just white lies, right? But I mean,
but even then, if you're a well-meaning, auditor who's visiting these places, you're still, unless you're.
Wait, I got to call bullshit on that. There's no such thing as a well-meaning auditor.
Are you going to do this?
But the point I do want to get across in that is one person, just the observation of one person versus another, and if we get it from the source versus, and suddenly we have this much stronger ecosystem of just networking. Do you break a lot of this down? Is this is?
But are we deviating from, ubiquitous internet access through a vehicle like Starlink or not necessarily Starlink, but like Starlink, to a ubiquitous networking environment that a 5G solution could provide?
Maybe
everything on your farm becomes a device that can network and talk back and forwards, and you have a ton of data that you can then do analytics and analyze.
Right.
I think yes, that would be nice, but the problem is, I'm sorry I interrupted you, Rob.
No. I'm gonna let you see if you get where I want to go.
I'll run down. Let me see if I can make what's going on in my head make sense for a second.
Yeah.
The problem is the people who are building the applications and the solutions for capturing this type of data. And listen, if your farm in the middle of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil suddenly has internet access, well, then all of a sudden you can do all kinds of neat stuff. And we don't need a big sophisticated Starlink. We can just do it with cellular networks that are already in place. It's a lot cheaper. But the problem is the people who are building these applications are, and I think you mentioned this a podcast or two ago, Tony, the people who are building these applications are sitting next to I think you used the phrase a bee's dick from a tower.
Yes.
So they're building these applications with this idea that, oh yeah, everyone's going to have 500 down. And so let's just capture everything and make these super chatty applications. But I like the idea that we take advantage of the cellular infrastructure and technology that's in place today you could have ubiquitous internet access tomorrow. But from a product development perspective, we have to be thinking about, well, how do you actually write applications that are more suited to low bandwidth, high
right? And that's always been the problem. If you think about a sensor, just say measuring the speed of a pump, it can pump out, no pun intended, it can pump out data on that speed, say every second, telling you that it's 600 RPM, 599, 601, 600, blah, blah, every second, right?
Right.
Do you need...
Oh
no.
We'll get it in the end, but
Tony
our network just blew up. Where'd Tony go?
Should have gotten Starlink.
Yeah, Starlink. There you are.
There you are.
Can you guys?
Yeah, we're back.
Yep.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Yes. Looks like you're going to be editing.
Well, I will be editing. I always edit with Tony because he doesn't live on a good network. This is actually my biggest problem in the Seattle area. Tony's on this weird fucking edge where it's terrible internet, but he lives in the middle of his fucking city. But anyway, so the thing I want to say about what you said, Russ, until Tony, you're on mute actually. Until look at the software and hit that. There you go.
I live within a stone's throw of CenturyLink fiber.
Yeah.
My arm would actually have to be only half as good as it was on Mercer Island to hit the CenturyLink fiber.
You wouldn't need to be Dirksen.
Do you think they could actually be asked laying fiber out this way? No. It runs down a main street past me. And actually, it's not even really a main street. It's like Washington Boulevard. It's a 2-lane road that winds along the side of Lake Washington. They put fiber in there, and the reason they put fiber in there is because they sponsor the Seattle Seahawks, whose training facility is half a mile up the road.
Mm-hmm.
That place, fiber. My place, nothing. I get...
You should have stuck with rugby.
Yep.
No, so what I have is Comcast, and Comcast is, how would you put this?
Atrocious.
A steaming pile of fetid dingo's kidneys that I hate with the passion of 1,000 blazing suns.
Truth.
So,
all right, so 2 quick facts, or 2 things I want to bring up, and we'll get into the last topic because for some reason, unlike last week, we were wordy as fuck this week. First off, Russ, I want to back up something very interesting in this. My brother, he works for one of the bigger airlines in the Northwest, and all you need to know is they're stationed out of Washington, to know who it is. But just dealing with baggage, weight, and everything, and the tools he has to deal with, he's in a major hub, and bandwidth is insane to get. So he's had to make massive you just had to harden it, I guess is the best way to put it, around just the fact that getting that kind of bandwidth to all the devices that beep every bag that comes in, and waiting the plane and making sure that it doesn't just immediately take off, go over backwards and crash back into the airport. And it's and he's in a hub, right? And then Tony, whose bandwidth can't be bothered, it's very interesting. So all these things in mind, we talk about Starlink, and I love the idea of Starlink, and I love the idea that what it could do for me to be in the middle of nowhere. What's that look like if it really takes a massive onboarding of people? Is it going to be able to sustain? What do we do there?
Well, you always end up with that issue of
what is happening here?
We lost him again.
So Tony needs to move to Starlink immediately, but yeah, you're on mute. If you give me 5 files to edit for this, I'll kill you. No, he is gone. Now you're on mute.
No,
Turn off
you're
mute.
muted now.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're back.
All right. Well, I can't hear you guys. So
Perfect.
No. So to provide you some fodder for the networking discussion.
Yeah.
What I have a problem here where, somewhere in the Comcast side of things, it just randomly starts blocking packets for certain protocols. And so I have a voice over IP phone.
Podcast protocols.
And at some point it will just start, like, I will hear a person talking, but I will be unable to talk to them.
Happened.
And, you know, I call them up and they're like, oh, we looked at our system and we can't see any problem. It's like, of course you can't, you dickheads. Because it's not your packets that are being blocked. It's my packets. I know they're being blocked because I can tell you that this is the IP address of the things that are being blocked. It's like, well, we're going to have to roll a truck out and have a guy look at it. Awesome. So you're going to have a guy come out. He's going to put his gear on, you know, the coax here in my office. And he's going to go, oh, yeah, it's all perfect. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. I know that. The people I spoke to should know that because I told them. The problem is this IP address that is on your network somewhere is throwing my goddamn packets away. And I know this because I can trace route it to that goddamn thing. You know, this is why it comes back. Go back to last week where I said, like, if we could replace everyone at Comcast with an AI, I would probably happily never talk to a person at Comcast ever again.
You still have the same problem. You'd at least be happy.
Right, but at least with an AI, I can say that it's being belligerent rather than stupid. Right?
No.
Truth.
If I can double back to that AI conversation, I have now been using ChatGPT to reply to my emails. So I'm actively replacing myself.
We'll have to have now that after this week and all the things we've done, we'll have to have a second episode at some point, and we'll just have to talk about all the bullshit we've done with it. But,
I got it to write me a poem about graph databases and iambic pentameter, and it was amazing.
We need to take these podcasts we do and submit it to it as training material and say, produce me a
new script.
This is
right.
ChatGPT is gonna be like, I give up. What's the point of it all?
I promise. If we get 40 of these, the 40th one will just be us reading the script that Chat tells us to do.
I am truly intrigued to see what ChatGPT does with Budgie Smuggler.
I'm glad it's back. We'll finish on that.
Yep.
But so just really quick to kind of finish it up is like, what is the upper limit of what we can do with a satellite-based internet protocol? Because I want to be in the middle of nowhere, but if everyone else decides to go in the middle of nowhere too, like...
Well, where I was going before I fell out was that you know that the leaf nodes, the sort of the branches in the leaf,
right,
the veins in the leaf, have more capacity than the main core of that node, that has more capacity, that has less capacity than all of the main branches that are hooking back to it. And all of these providers sell stuff based on the theory that, you know, on traffic analysis, saying that, you know, less than 1% of our customers will use 1% of their bandwidth, you know, 100% of the time. And so that backhaul doesn't need to be an enormously thick set of fibers to provide the throughput. We can cut down on that. The thing with the Starlink, at least the initial rollout of the individual satellites, is that each one of those individual satellites could easily get swamped. And
right.
So you would be there. Well, that's where their version 2 came in with the concept of having laser links between the individual satellites as a mesh sort of satellite network.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly, Russ. Where they could work out that a packet could go to this satellite and be downlinked to a different downlink center through the laser instead of coming off the satellite and straight back down again to the downlink. All of that could be swamped. You're never going to be able to beat a physical medium. Back in the 70s or 80s, there was some computer scientist that, and I'd have to look up the quote, but he said, never underestimate the bandwidth of a station wagon full of magnetic tapes. and his thing was back then was that they could fill a station wagon with magnetic tapes and drive it across the US, even though it might take 5 days to get there. In terms of the totality of bits they shifted, it was still faster than what they could do over the links at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I think what you're going to end up with is a hybrid model of where there'll be more downstations, downlinks needed, and they'll be connected to high bandwidth fiber. Because basically, once you're laying fiber, whether you lay one strand of fiber or 100, mm-hmm. the cost isn't, the cost to do that isn't terribly much more.
Right.
The cost of the cable isn't the problem. The cost is the guy with the trenching tool and the permits and the refix the road and,
right.
Move the power pole out of the way and all this sort of stuff.
So what you're seeing is maybe fiber going to certain endpoints and then farming out to mesh networks essentially that are providing that ubiquitous access for the last couple of miles of the expensive part.
Well, think about it. Like if you took the entire state of Texas and divided it into 100, and then put a downlink in each one of those squares, and then said every Starlink satellite that crossed Texas, will take a packet and then push it to the closest downlink that it gets, and then it goes back onto fiber. All I have to do mm-hmm. is deploy 100 downlink stations. Now, I'm not saying that's a trivial cost. It'll be an exceptionally large cost.
Right.
But you could imagine doing that. And then now suddenly, well, do I need fiber to my house? Do I need, now I'm talking about mm-hmm. all of my communications are basically going through, me and maybe 50 people are talking to or whatever the number is. The mm-hmm. Starlink guys are way smarter than I am. It's Teflon. And, they're going to talk to that one satellite down to the appropriate link, done. So I think we'll see that hybrid model. I think we'll see more downlinks.
Interesting.
Yeah. And now we have a new unit of measure for bandwidth, which is station wagons full of magnetic tape.
With people driving with budgie smugglers on, because we got to keep that.
I
joke
think
going.
It was also a wood-paneled station wagon.
Oh, I assumed it was wood paneled.
I mean, I was either a wood-paneled station wagon or a wood-paneled. What do they call them? The Chrysler minivan. One of those two.
Yeah.
Oh, the free candy van.
Yeah, the free candy van. only my van has free candy on the side. But all right, man. No,
that's Russ. If you're wondering, that's why I keep asking him about what happens to all the talent he hires.
Yeah.
Some of them are still working for me. The other ones, questions to be answered in other podcasts.
You may want to take a LiDAR out to your cabin at some point, Tony. You'd be surprised.
As long as my dogs don't turn up with like a
femur
bone or a femur or something, I don't really care.
Wilson will definitely be the one.
Yeah,
that picks
live your truth, Rob.
True. Yeah, I'm with you. Well, all right, guys. I think we got through another one of these things. Once again, I almost feel this needs another rip because there are so many things I want to talk about technology, like CDNs with like satellites, all kinds of stuff. But we get through it.
Let's all hang around after we wrap this up.
All right.
Just to do some network discussion.
Totally. With that in mind,
diagnose this.
All right, guys.
Okay.
everyone, people, thank you so much. Cheers.
Right.
Thank you for listening to us, especially you, Mr. New Zealand.
I can't believe they keep downloading it. They do. We have one person. Cheers all. Peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. I'm not sure we learned anything today. Wait, I take that back. Don't drink Foster's beer after the 70s. Don't use Comcast in the Pacific region. And if you can get fiber internet, never move. As the outro narrator, I also want to recommend an honorable mention to this list because I learned something this week. The fact that when I was on my deathbed sick, maybe not quite dying, but you remember the episode. And if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's episode 2. It was my best work. Anyway, I finally learned how to say budgie smugglers. To be fair, I didn't know what that was. So don't hold me accountable. Whatever. So that's what I learned today. Anyways, bandwidth in the United States, it's a luxury, and just don't take that for granted, okay? See you next week. I'm tired. Cheers.